South Africa's biggest retailer, Shoprite, grew its profit more than 1/10 in its latest interim results. But this hasn't come without its challenges, as the group is actually spending more than 3 million rand per day on diesel and generators to keep the lights on and counter the effects of load shedding. Trading profit at its South African supermarket business rose to 5.4 billion rand. The firm added 1.4% to its market share in the country, and the retailer says it spent 560 million rand on diesel for its generators at its stores, a further 245 million in insurance proceeds relating to damage incurred during the social unrest in 2021. That was helped to offset some cost increases. The retailer says they expect to open more stores. But to talk more about this and other stories happening in the country, I'm joined by Peter Engelbrecht, who is the Group CEO at Shoprite Holdings. Peter, thank you very much for your time this evening. It's been a difficult period for the Shoprite Group, but before we get to the performance of the past 6 months, I want to get your take on the 1.3% contraction in GDP for the last 3 months of 2022 in Q4. What do you make of this, particularly as many CEOs that we've spoken to are actually pointing the finger at load shedding?
Yes, obviously a hugely disappointing number, but not entirely unexpected. The effect has been enormous on the entire economy, and on that point, I actually just want to point out that a lot of us focus on the direct cost of the diesel, but it's actually the whole value chain that gets affected. It's from the farmer that can't irrigate to the abattoir that can't slaughter the chickens in time with the correct weight, the direct costs of maintenance and diesel, and one of the biggest costs is the food wastage incurred, especially when load shedding is at an unexpected time and not according to schedule. And it even ends up in security costs, the increase in security costs that you certainly don't want to be caught in a parking lot in the evening with no lights, street lights around. And then the criminality factor in South Africa can't be ignored. Criminals are taking this opportunity of load shedding to pull themselves into action and be very opportunistic as well.
Peter, that sounds very, very worrying and concerning. Many other CEOs have spoken about the risk that the country faces if we continue to have high stages of rotational blackouts. They have spoken about the fact that we could be facing a food safety challenge. We spoke to Agri SA even earlier today, and they were saying something similar. Are you seeing the same thing if load shedding continues, and how are you planning around that? Because you are actually spending hundreds of millions of rands to make sure that the lights are on and there's food on the shelves.
Yeah, it is a balancing act. That is what we do when we wake up in the morning, is to find the plans how to do that. So we have multiple electricity saving interventions. That's why overall our electricity bill in the company itself went up by 4 to 5%, whereas we know the official increase was much higher. Unfortunately, although we've invested quite a bit on solar power and PV panels, that only covers 4.5% of our total utilization of power. Because we, of course, don't own all the buildings that we're in, and landlords are taking up those investments itself. And we try as best to complement our generator power generation by that of solar power. So it is absolutely imperative for us to very, very quickly get private sector that already are generating renewable energy through wind and solar to get them into the transmission system. That must be the priority for us mitigate the current circumstances. The country can wave a storm or weather a storm a little bit on load shedding status up to 4, but beyond that it becomes an incredible challenge and very, very costly to the economy.
Let's get into the numbers now. The performance of the past 6 months, would it be safe to say that the performance would have been much better than what it is had it not been for all the work that you're doing around ensuring that you keep the lights on? How have you performed? How do you characterize your performance within the fact that consumers are financially also hard-pressed?
I firstly am very disappointed because a very, very good set of results are now being masked and made average for all the hard-working 152,000 people of Shoprite that come here every day to execute best for their consumer. Because without those costs, the profit growth of the company would have been in excess of 30% on a massive high sales growth of almost 18%. 16.8. So it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. So even given that circumstances, very pleasing for the group to report that in the 6 months past, we were able to assist customers with over 7 billion in extra savings right at till point, instant cash savings. On top of that, we maintain true to our mantra. We still sell a loaf of bread for 5 rand since 2016. And with the wheat prices currently, you can understand what that subsidy cost us. But we feel it our responsibility to the South African public at a time where they are really in dire straits, I believe.
Peter, let's talk about the next 6 months. Which factors do you think are going to impact on the country's growth, but in particular on the Shoprite Holdings Group and its performance going forward for the second half of the year?
Very pleasing to say is that we'll be opening for the 12 months ending June close to 400 new stores. We keep on creating jobs. In the past 6 months, almost 4,000 of them. The 60/60, which are well known by now, have created just under 8,000 new job opportunities. That's excluding the drivers, because that's driver-owner business type business. And we are by far the biggest contributor to the government's YES program of employment creation. And that's excluding the 4,500 jobs that we will be saving by incorporating, or we have incorporated, those mass-market stores we acquired in January.
Peter, there is an exciting development for small businesses and suppliers that Shoprite is opening up called Homegrown. You are opening up this to small, medium and macro enterprises. Tell us about that before I let you go.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a twofold answer there. The one is Homegrown. We launched it officially about 3 Tuesdays ago. And is specifically aimed at developing SMMEs. We've got our Kailicha cookies, and we've got all those beautiful stories that, and I hope that the consumers will enjoy the product. They are good. And we also assist them with funding through our CredX business that we created in specific around that to assist our suppliers and develop the SMMEs. We have advanced 476 million already through that vehicle to help getting more of the smaller and SME suppliers into our overall supply chain.
Peter Engelbrecht, thank you very much for your time. Peter is the Group CEO at South Africa's biggest shopping retailer, that is the Shoprite Group. Talking to us there about the fact that their profit and their performance would have been 30% higher in the 6 months had it not been for load shedding.